So what I want to do is take flour, add a bit of salt, yeast and water, and that's as simple as a baguette is. France is known for its baguettes. If you were to ever say what is the national emblem, perhaps it's not the rooster, it well may be the baguette. So I've just got simply in here a bread flour. It means it's high in protein. It's got some sea salt going in there. Yeast, right, I'm using dried yeast, but you can get fresh yeast. Bring those two together. There is one magic ingredient that I brought with me. This is called a levain. It's basically sourdough. Now, a good baguette will always have a small bit of sourdough in it. The other component that I need to pop in is the water. So I want to bring it to a mass. You can see how I'm just pulling that together. Now it's time to get my hands in here. Trust me, this dough is going to transform in front of your eyes, and now you can start to see there's a little bit of elasticity coming in here. This simple manipulation is strengthening the protein, the gluten. You see what I'm doing is I'm picking it up and turning it over, picking it up and turning it over and pushing it around. You know, it's like pull over, pick it up, grab it, pull it over. I'm just really not doing anything to it. I mean, you can see I'm just having quite a nice relaxing time. Picking it up, stretching it over. It's a simple action, right? What's happening with that pulling it over, it's stretching the protein. In the inside is the air that's being trapped, right? I need oxygen for my yeast to rise. The fantastic thing is I'm not up to my ears in flour. You know, I haven't got flour all over the bench. In fact, you haven't seen me touch the flour because French bread is all about a soft dough. So don't put any flour near the dough and let the dough relax. I'm going to do that and I'm going to show you what it's like when I come back. So here's my dough, and the philosophy of less is more is really what's happening in this whole kneading process. Watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at that. You can see there's bubbles starting to appear in the top of it, okay? See these little bubble marks here? That's because I've been capturing the air. You know, when I've been folding it over, the air's getting inside, and that means the yeast is doing its job. Look, I did that 5 times. I'm gonna now leave it for another 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna come back to it and play with it again. So you do that over about 10 minutes, and that's the difference today from previous years, and this sort of technique is what they used all those years ago in France. So I'm gonna give it 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna put it into the bowl and let it rest for an hour. So coming back in 2 minutes. So that 2 or 3 minutes resting does a really amazing job because gluten is like a whole lot of rubber bands. It's elastic. So effectively what's in here is this tight matrix of rubber bands. Now, if you continue to take a rubber band and you twist it around something, it snaps. And that's what's happening in here. So pretend there's a whole lot of rubber bands in here. And if I push it around the table and knead it and knead it and knead it, it just becomes a whole lot of broken rubber bands, right? And that is not good for bread baking because it doesn't retain the gas. So here's my last little effort, right, before I put it to sleep. I'm being gentle. You know, no one likes to be beaten up, and if you're beaten up, you don't perform very well. I always try to use a glass bowl, and you know, the only reason I do that is so I can literally see inside it and see what's happening. A little bit of olive oil in the base of it, and just rubbing it up the sides. And that's just going to help so that when I want to tip the dough out onto the bench, it's going to release it, right? And again, it's all about the integrity of the dough. Pop it in like that. Take some cling film or Glad wrap and just pop it on the top. I'm going to leave it for around about an hour. So we're going to come back and we're going to start turning in some baguettes. The magic of the dough, if we can undo this, is that it's risen up, you know, and it's nice and puffy. So what really disappoints a lot of people in their attempts to make bread is that it's lifeless, it's dead. And just bear in mind the minimal effort that I put into manipulating the dough. And the dough is full of life, because when I press it, it's bouncing back. If I didn't knead it properly and I press this, the whole thing will just deflate. And I can guarantee you that when it comes out of the oven, it's not going to be dead, it's not going to be dense, it's going to be open and alive, and that's what we want, and particularly in a baguette dough. And that kneading is really crucial. Now I can add some flour. Tip it out, just like that, and you watch what happens with that olive oil. Okay, I don't even have to do anything, and it just falls off and releases itself. If I didn't put that olive oil on the bottom of the bowl, it would be struggling to come out, and it would be torn, it would be ripped, and that's just damaging my dough significantly. Right, so I just want a little bit of flour now around the edges. Two things I'm going to make out of this, which are classically French. One is fougasse. Fougasse is a flat bread. It's like that, and it's got cuts in it. Okay, so you know that's how it looks. And it's quite easy to do. I'm just going to take some flour like this, pop it on there. Look, it doesn't matter what size you do it. It's entirely up to you. Now is when I pile the flour on it, and I'm going to cut it here and cut it here. I'm just opening it up, and look at that. That is what we call a leaf. And the reason for the holes is that if you put the bread in just in one piece, it would blow up like a balloon. But when you cut it like this, of course, it won't blow up. Okay, so that is the reason for the holes, as well as being very decorative. I'm just going to set that aside. Let me take my baguette dough, and let's divide it into 4 baguettes. You know, the global baker, the travelling baker, the Kiwi baker that I am, this travels with me. And this is what the French call a couche cloth. It's Belgian linen, and it's covered in flour, and I'll show you what I do with it. Okay, and I'm going to roll this. Okay, so you can see the seam along the bottom here. That is going to sit into this little couche cloth. I'm going to lift this up and tuck it. So now it's almost like in a gutter of its own. It's going to hold that little shape. Naturally, I'm not going to put that into the oven. The moulding of the baguette, right, as you can see me doing, is all about my hands becoming a little bit firm but gentle. See these little wicked little ends, all right? That's really important. Here's my seam along the base, all right? Rolling in a little bit of flour. Okay, and popping it down onto my couche cloth. Roll it in a bit of flour. That's very classical of the product, is to have that flour encrusted look. This dough now sits here for, look, only about 20 minutes. We're gonna cut it, and we're going to put it straight into the oven. With my fougasse, I'm going to put them straight into the oven now, and I can tell you what, when they come out, they're going to be puffy. Oven, very important, temperature. I've got it set on about 250 degrees. All right, now the other thing that we're going to need is some steam. Okay, so I've got a little bit of water. I'm not going to throw all of this in there. Very important to put steam inside the oven when you're making a baguette. The steam is actually going to help it grow nice and evenly without it being sort of a dry start. Okay, so let's say 15 minutes and we're going to have a look, see them come out nice and puffy and certainly nice and crusty. So my fougasse has been in the oven just long enough. I'm going to take them out. You can just see they've puffed up, they're nice and crusty. Now what I need to do is to get my baguettes in the oven, and if I don't put this into the oven now, it's just going to grow and grow, and then eventually it'll collapse. So here I'm putting my baguettes on a nice hot tray, all right? Okay, so now I'm just going to cut with a sharp razor blade. Okay, I'm putting 3 slashes. It's really important to have a nice sharp razor blade. This is going into the oven, 250 degrees, nice and hot. That water is going directly onto the base of the oven to create a moist environment. We're going to come back to that in about 18 minutes. So, these are my little baguettes. These are looking good. You can hear that baguette, you can smell that beautiful yeasty flavour come through there. That's just great. It's the caramelisation in the sugar which is in the flour, the natural sugar that really gives you a beautiful product.